Hi everyone. Today's session is on the law and financial crimes, and we're doing the assignment discussion today. Before we start on the assignment discussion, I just want to give you an overview of what we did in the last 4 learning outcomes. So it's a summary of what we've done before we carry on with the assignment. So the first learning outcome we looked at was learning outcome 1, which is to understand UK financial crime provision relating to insider dealing and market abuse. So in learning outcome 1, we looked at what financial crime is. So an introduction to what financial crime is and financial crime in the UK and in the EU. We looked at the Financial Services and Markets Act 2000. We looked at the Fraud Act 2006, the Theft Act 1968, and nature and characteristics of financial crimes. We looked at corporate scandals, the role of SFO and FCA. We looked at 1.1 civil offences according to Financial Services and Markets Act 2000. We looked at what the Act deals with, which is the cornerstone of financial service regulations. It sets out rules, enforcements, which applies to financial firms. We looked at the civil offence of market abuse. We looked at what is the offence of market abuse. So 3 different offences: misusing information which is not generally available to the market, misleading the market and distorting the market. Who could commit the crime? So the offence of market abuse can be committed by anyone. We looked at 1.2, which was to identify sources of law on insider dealings. So the Market Abuse Directive 2003/6/EC. We also looked at the Market Abuse Directive 2003/6/EC in regards to the market abuse regulations as well, and how that impacted on the European Union and the UN. We also looked at 1.3, which was to evaluate the statutory frameworks and EC context on dealing with insider dealing and market abuse. We looked at the UK's Financial Services and Markets Act 2000. We looked at 1.4, which was to analyse the general offences of financial crimes under Financial Services and Markets Act 2000, Fraud Act 2006, and Theft Act 1968. We went on to look at case examples. So we looked at the Cuba trading scheme. In regards to that, we also looked at the Fraud Act 2006, which I mentioned earlier, Theft Act, the role of the Serious Fraud Office, SFO, and Financial Conduct Authority. We looked at nature and characteristics of financial crimes. We looked at corporate scandals of financial crime, and we looked at some big scandals in 2022, which was Santander, logistics firm, gambling brand penalised, UK estate agents, and Credit Suisse. And I also, in Learning Outcome 1, referred you to some articles on financial crime that you could read in your own time. Then we went on to Learning Outcome 2, which was looking at understanding the impact of money laundering regulations on businesses and its international dimensions. So we looked at money laundering regulations, we looked at money laundering methods, SOCPA, we looked at placement, layering, integration. We looked at what money laundering was and what the regulations were. We looked at analysing the background of UK Proceeds of Crime Act 2002 and explaining offences under that Act, under the ATHE, which is the Financial Action Task Force on Money Laundering. We also looked at the background of the UK's Proceeds of Crime Act and what it dealt with and what the relevance of the Act was. We looked at offences under the Proceeds of Crime Act, so concealing, disguising, converting, entering into or becoming concerned in an arrangement, or acquiring, using, or possessing criminal property. We also looked at 2.2, which was to evaluate the international dimensions of money laundering regulations, and looked at Section 7 of POCA. We then went on to look at anti-money laundering regulations in the EU, and looked at KYC, Know Your Customer. We looked at the European Union. We also looked at 2.3, which was to analyse the purpose of money laundering regulations. We then went on to look at purpose of money laundering regulations. We looked at the importance of POCA. We looked at 2.4, which was to evaluate the consequences of money laundering on society. Things like sabotaging the private area, loss of control of financial approach, financial twisting, loss of income, reputation. We also went on to look at the consequences of being prosecuted in the Proceeds of Crime Act 2002, society implications, so impact on the community in learning outcome 2. We looked at the negative effects on money laundering on the economy. We also looked at money laundering cases, so HSBC money laundering scandal, Danks money laundering scandal, or Wachovia money laundering scandal. We also looked at cases such as the Lechman brothers, Vernon Madoff, Monzi scheme, Standard Chartered money laundering allegations, and BCC scandal. Then we went on to learning outcome 3. We also referred you to some articles on money laundering in learning outcome 2. We then went on to look at learning outcome 3, which is to understand the regulation and commercial policy issues relating to white collar crime. We looked at what white collar crime is. We looked at an introduction to white collar crime, types of white collar crime, fraud, embezzlement, bribery, tax evasion, money laundering. We then went on to look at 3.1 to analyse the historical development of white collar crime and the role in statutory law in this. So we looked at Sunderland's element of white collar crime in the 1930s. We also looked at the element of role in statutory law. So we looked at the laws around white collar crime, and some laws that govern that would be the Fraud Act 2006 and Bribery Act 2010. We then went on to look at evaluating the role of the criminal law in supporting prosecution of white collar crime. And we looked at the Bribery Act 2010, and we looked at then critically analysing civil remedies in context of white collar crime. We also looked at analysing the defences available and to what extent these need to be developed further. We looked at common defences such as penalties such as victim restitution, steep fines, prison time, property forfeiture, probation, and community service. We looked at some common defence tactics such as entrapment, lack of intent, illegal search or seizure, statute of limitations, intoxication, coercion or duress, and insanity. We then went on to look at whistleblowers in preventing white collar crime and why they play a vital role. And we looked at some real world examples of white collar crime such as Enron, WorldCom, Bernie Madoff, Instock, Adelphia Theatre, Tyco, Health, South, and Jack Abramoff. We then went on to look at why white collar crime is so important to detect within individuals. You know, it's usually the position and the power of the authority. We then went on from learning outcome 3 on to learning outcome 4, which is the final learning outcome, and we looked at understanding the development of global financial crime and the international initiatives in regulating this area. We went on to look at what money laundering was, what corruption was, and what cybercrime was. We looked at elements of 4.1 to compare and contrast historical and economic general provisions of law on money laundering, terrorist financing, and corruption. So we looked at the anti-money laundering and combating finance of terrorism, why that's so important in trying to combat financial crimes. We looked at corruption, why corruption is a complex phenomena and can occur at different scales. We also looked at 4.2, which was to analyse the EC Market Abuse Directive to control market manipulation and abusive practices. So we looked at the Market Abuse Directive, MAD, which is a European Union legislation that aims to prevent and detect market abuse in the financial markets. We looked at EU Abuse Regulation, MAR, and its implementing legislation were repealed and replaced by the EU Market Abuse Regulation. We also went on to look at what market abuse is in regards to that. And also the market abuse, what it outlines 3 main forms of market abuse: insider dealing, unlawful disclosure of inside information, and market manipulation. We looked at the main laws relating to market abuse, such as criminal offences and civil offences. We then went on to look at evaluating the reporting requirements and the impact this has on global financial crime. We also went on to look at key international anti-money laundering regulatory bodies, such as Financial Action Task Force, FATF, the European Union, and the United Nations. We looked at the Financial Action Task Force. We looked at also customer due diligence, CDD, and know your customer KYC and the importance of that. We also looked at evaluating the role of criminal law in supporting financial regulations in the UK. We also looked at sanctions and watch lists in the UK and the importance of them. We went to 4.5 and we looked at critically analysing the international role in developing mechanisms to regulate global financial crime. And we looked at the Financial Crimes Compliance, CFCC. We looked at technology and the future of compliance in the UK and why that is so important in the changing world. We also looked at anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism. And we looked at the year ahead, the Financial Conduct Authority's ambitious enforcement plan and the changes in that plan in regards to financial crime. We then went on to look at shaping the future of anti-money laundering and looking at things like reducing system dependencies, using data in new ways, automating AML processes, and adoption of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So we looked at the importance of elements of technology and the changes in the plan to money laundering and financial crimes. So that was all the 4 learning outcomes. Now we're going to move on to, so that was a summary of all the 4 learning outcomes. Now we're going to move on to the assignment discussion. So the law and financial crimes assignment discussion. Unit aims. The aim of this unit is to enable learners to understand legal compliance requirements in financial services and markets in relation to fraud, corruption, money laundering, terrorism, and theft laws. Learners will also be introduced to current theories and legal practices in the law of financial crimes and learn about the different statutory frameworks, financial services, regulations, and capital market, fraud and theft act, and criminal law regulations. What information needs to go on the assignment? So you will need to include at the start of the assignment your name, your registration number, your unit level, which is in this case level 7, law and financial markets. And that's really important because as the assessor, they need to know whose work it is and which level they're doing and what the unit is that they're doing. So this needs to be included at the start. Assignment declaration, again, assignment declaration is so important. You need to assign this declaration to confirm that the work that you are submitting is not you've not done any form of plagiarism, collusion, or cheating, and you've followed the regulations of the awarding body. You are signing this, you are acknowledging that this is your work. So you have followed the plagiarism submission and you've submitted the work and it's your original work. And you have done it academically, honestly, and you understand the regulations of the awarding body. So you need to make sure that, there's no forms of malpractice or there's no form of collusion, plagiarism, to identify that you have done the work yourself. This is you signing this document to confirm that's your work. You need to make sure that when you are referencing, and I'll go throughout this assignment, I will go through Harvard referencing all the time. I'll go through collusion all the time and reiterate this to you because it's so important that you need to identify that you are not copying any of the work, colluding any of the work, but you are also, if you are taking something out, a quote or anything like that, you make sure that you are referencing it. And if you are trying to work out a paraphrase of a paragraph of a book, paraphrase it in your own words and make sure you reference everything. Referencing is so important, and the referencing system we're using is the Harvard system for referencing. Plagiarism and collusion. Students must submit and complete their work. As I've mentioned, collusion and plagiarism is so important. Collusion may occur where your assignments are similar to other students. So you need to make sure that it's taken seriously, and you are referring to the academic misconduct policy, which is available on Moodle for you to refer to, because your awarding body, if there are forms of collusion, then you have you've plagiarized and you have breached the misconduct policy, and there are consequences of that because you've signed the declaration. So you need to make sure that you are following what the requirements are of the awarding body, but also you are reading the policy that is on Moodle so to identify, what is collusion, what is plagiarism, and what, if your work is a form of collusion. So make sure, again, reiterating, referencing is so important. Assessment. So to achieve a pass for this unit, learners must provide evidence to demonstrate they have fulfilled all the learning outcomes and meet the standards specified by the assessment criteria. So learning outcomes to be met, all learning outcomes need to be met, from learning outcome 1 that we've gone through to learning outcome 4. So all them assessment criteria need to be met. Okay, so you need to meet learning outcome 1 to 4. Okay. The type of assessment that you've got to produce is a portfolio of evidence for this assignment, and the word count is 4,000 words. You need to make sure that you are adhering to the word count and you are looking at the requirements of the word count on the assignment brief. That is again available on Moodle for you. So you need to be referring all the time to Moodle for all the guidance and the support. Your assignment brief is on Moodle as well, and that would give you the requirements. But a lot of the stuff from the assignment, most of the stuff from the assignment brief, I've put into the assignment discussion, so you can have this, and this will be all recorded on Moodle for you. So the start of the assignment, you need to include table of contents. And why that is important is so that the person reading it is able to identify you covered each element in the table of contents. Font size 12. It needs to be 1.5 line spacing, page numbers to be inserted. And the reason behind the table of contents is that page numbers need to be inserted to identify where things are and where the work is. An introduction, and make sure you are putting all the assessment criteria AC in headings. Make sure you are not changing the command words. The command words may be things like analyze, describe, define. Do not change the words to what you think they should be changed to. Keep the words as they are. They are command words and they need to be in your heading. You do the headings and then you write under the headings, which I'll go through a lot more with you later. General information. So the top part of this unit will be delivered at UK Versity, which is online. Handouts and briefings, which I've told you, are on Moodles for you to go on to, which is the virtual learning environment for all the course material. So everything, any additional reading to learning outcome 1, 2, 3 or 4, any articles that I've mentioned are all on Moodle. Any examples, they are towards the back in the references as well, but they are also on Moodles for you to go on to, okay? And these are additional sources that will help you build your assignment, but also give examples of things. So learning outcomes, we've got learning outcome 1, which I'm going to go through again, understand UK financial crime provision relating to insider dealing and market abuse. Learning outcome 2, to understand the impact of money laundering regulations on businesses and its international dimensions. Learning outcome 3, to understand the regulation and commercial policy issues relating to white collar crimes. And learning outcome 4, to understand the development of global financial crime and the international initiatives in regulating this area. So there are 4 tasks for you to do, and we'll go through each one, and they're all separated on here, so you have a better idea of which relates to which one. So the first one, task 1 of 4. Task 1, assessment criteria to be covered. So to cover this task, you need to be looking at learning outcome 1, which is to understand UK financial crime provision relating to insider dealing and market abuse. So this is the learning outcome that will cover task 1. You need to be looking at assessment criteria to be covered 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 and 1.5 of learning outcome 1. So task 1, produce a report which considers the extent to which market abuse regulations prevent the abuse of markets. You must ensure that your report includes all of these following. So there's 5 parts. You must ensure that you look at analysing civil offence according to the Financial Services and Markets Act 2000. You must make sure you're identifying sources of law on insider dealing. You make sure you are looking at, in the report, it includes an assessment of the statutory frameworks and EC context on dealing with insider dealing and market abuse. And you need to look at analyses the general offences of financial crimes under Financial Services and Markets Act 2000, Fraud Act 2006, and Theft Act 1968. And then the 5th one, the last one, you need to compare and contrast how the market abuse regulations and regulators act against insider dealing and related financial frauds. So these are 5 parts of the assignment. So your assignment is 4,000 words. So each task you've got to do, it's got to be about 1,000 words for each task, because it's 4,000 words. Yes, so each task to be 1,000 words. So you need to ensure that your report has this part in it. So you'll talk about analysing civil offences according to the Financial Services. Put that as a heading. Put that as a heading and write the answer under the heading. The same with part 2, identifies the source. Put that as a heading and put it in part, put it all the answer underneath it. Each one. So you've got 5 parts to it. So you need to make sure you are answering all them with them as the headings and then writing under them. Do not, again, and I reiterate this to you, do not change the command words, leave them as they are. Make sure you are putting these as headings and answering that question. So, example of question in task 1. So I've just pulled out a question for you to look at. So whether we could analyze, where you'd find this answer within Learning Outcome 1. So within Learning Outcome 1, you'd look at analysing the offences, okay, in regards to the fraud and the Financial Services Act and the Fraud Act. So you would look at Learning Outcome 1 for this, and you would look at slides 7 onwards, okay, and that will look at all the financial crimes and the general offences, and you would look at slides Learning Outcome 1 and 7 onwards. So that would give you literally an answer to this, but also do extra reading around that, okay? Delivery and submission for assignment task 1 of 1. The submission is in a form of report written in Word format. The recommended word limit is 1,000 words, excluding any diagrams, references and appendices, okay? So make sure you are sticking to the word count. Learners are expected to adhere to the word count, as I've mentioned, and keep checking your word count. A 10% leeway either way of this range is permitted before the assessor is instructed to stop reading. So you've got 10% leeway, but make sure you are answering the question you have been asked to answer. Now we're going to go on to task 2 of 4. So task 2, assessment criteria to be covered by Learning Outcome 2. Understand the impact of money laundering. So this is what it needs to be covered. Regulations on businesses and its international dimensions. So this task will be covered by Learning Outcome 2, and the task assessment criteria to be covered is 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4, okay? So the task 2 of 4, you need to produce a report which reviews the effectiveness of the Proceeds of Crime Act 2002 and the Serious Organised Crime and Police Act 2005 as anti-money laundering measures. So you need to be looking at that in regards to Learning Outcome 2. In the report, you must ensure that you are, number 1, analysing the purpose of money laundering regulations. Number 2, analyse the purpose of money laundering regulations. Number 2, evaluate the international dimensions of money laundering regulations. Number 3, so this is for task 2, analyse the background of the UK's Proceeds of Crime Act 2002 and explain offences under its provisions. Then you need to look at evaluate the consequences of money laundering on society. So there are 4 parts to task 2. Make sure you are writing this bit and then writing under that bit and making sure you are explaining that part. Make sure you are evaluating second bit, and then you write the exact command words as I mentioned and write under it. Make sure you answer it underneath it. So each one will be a heading. So this it must include recent case law in your report as well. So make sure you are using case law as well. Example of question 2 in task 2 of 4, analyze the purpose of money laundering. So you look at the elements of this in learning outcome 2, okay? And it's outcome 2, and it is pages it will start with pages 5 onwards, and that will look at the aspects of money laundering and the purpose of money laundering regulation and why there's a need for that, okay? So you need to be looking at elements on pages 5 onwards. Okay, so that is task 2. Delivery and submission of task 2. The submission is in a form of report, which is written in Word document. And the recommended word limit is 1,000 words, excluding, again, diagrams, references, and appendices. So you've got 4 parts to this. So you would do it like 250 words each for each part. And make sure, again, headings. Learners are expected to adhere to the word count, and a 10% leeway either side of this range is permitted before the assessor is instructed to stop reading. So that's task 1 and task 2. Now we're going on to task 3 of 4. Task 3 of 4 criteria needs to be covered under task learning outcome 3, which is to understand the regulation and commercial policy issues relating to white collar crimes. Task assessment criteria to be covered are 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4. Task 3 of 4. So here, civil law has played an important part in supporting criminal law to combat white collar crime. Produce a report which uses case law to highlight how civil remedies have evolved to combat white collar crime. You must ensure in your report that you analyzes the historical development of white collar crime and the role in statutory law in dealing with this. You must then secondly evaluate the role of criminal law in supporting prosecution of white collar crime. And these would be headings, and then you would write under them. Thirdly, critically analyze civil remedies, the context of white collar crimes in regards to that, and you would be doing that as a separate part. And then fourthly, you would be analysing the defence available and to what extent these need to be developed. So you need to look at these. You will need to investigate a minimum of 2 legal cases as part of your research in order to provide a full response to this task. Make sure you're looking at the cases in regards to this to identify that you are answering this fully. Remember, it's a level 7 unit, so you need more detail and depth as well. Example of question to answer. So you could look at analysing the historical development of white collar crime, and where to find that would be learning outcome 3, and you would be looking at the element of page 7 onwards. So you'd look at Sunderland's points of view, traditional elements of that in regards to white collar crime, and look at the element of what he thought the societal focus and position on white collar crime. So that's task 3 of 3. Delivery and submission of task 3 of 4. The submission is in the form of a report, again written in a Word format. And the recommended word limit is 1,000 words again, excluding any diagrams, references, and appendices. Make sure you are referring to, checking your word count all the time and referring to this quite in detail. Learners are expected to adhere to the word count. Again, 10% leeway either way of this range is permitted before the assessor is instructed to stop reading any further. Task 4, assessment criteria. So now we're moving on to task 4, assessment criteria to be covered for task 4. Learning outcome 4 is to understand the development of global financial crime and the international initiatives in regulating this area. So that's learning outcome 4 that we'll be looking at in regards to doing this part of the assignment. It will cover task criteria to be covered would be 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, and 4.5. So make sure task 4 is in regards to learning outcome 4. Task 4 of 4. Produce a report which discusses the development of global financial crime and the international initiatives which are in place to regulate global financial crime. As part of your conclusion, you must suggest with justification one future international initiative which could be used to combat global financial crime. You must ensure in your report that you compare and contrast historical and economic general provisions on law, provisions of law on money laundering, terrorist financing and corruption. So it's 3 different parts. So you're looking at provisions on law on money laundering, terrorist financing and corruption that you need to look at in the first part of it. So that is first part of your task 4. Okay, so that's the different parts of that. Then you need to look at the second part, which is analyzes the EC Market Abuse Directive to control market manipulation and abusive practices. So this is the second part, and it needs to be, like I mentioned, in a heading, okay, and then you write under it. Do not change the command words. Number 3, evaluates the reporting requirements and the impact this has on the global financial crime. Number 4, evaluate the role of criminal law in supporting financial regulations in the United Kingdom. So this is the 4th part. And then the 5th part of task 4 is to critically analyze the international role in developing mechanisms to regulate global financial crime. Now, you need to make sure that each of them you are looking at separately and you are having them as a separate heading. So that is your separate heading, and make sure you are not changing again the command words. Okay, that is a separate heading. That would be a separate heading you would write under that. That would be a separate heading you would write under that, and same for 4 and 5. Example of question that I took out to just give you a bit of an example of where you'd find it. Analyze the EC Abuse Directive, Market Abuse Directive, sorry, to control market manipulation and abusive practices. So in this one, you would be looking at learning outcome 4, where you'd find the answer, and it would be slides 8 onwards. So you would be looking at slide 8 in regards to the Market Abuse Directive, what it does, when it came about, what the Council Directive meant, and what was the purpose of that in regards to controlling market manipulation and abusive practices. So it's for learning outcome 4, slides 8 onwards for that answer. Delivery and submission for task 4 of 4. The submission is in the form of a report written in Word format. So all the submissions for all the tasks, task 1, 2, 3, and 4, is in the form a Word format. The recommended word limit for this one as well is 1,000 words, excluding any diagrams, references, and appendices. So make sure you are adhering to the word count. And make sure you have a 10% leeway, but you need to make sure that you are in this range before the assessor will stop reading anything. So if you do anything over, the assessor will stop reading any further and will not mark anything that's there that's over the word count. So you need to make sure you are adhering to the word count expected of you. So for each task, the word count is, as we've gone through, is 1,000 words. For the overall assignment brief, it's 1,000 words. All learners must show a knowledge and understanding of the subject area, provide references to the relevant case law or legislation wherever appropriate. So if there's any, and be able to, support your answer with a wider reading, support your answer with any sort of elements of examples and case laws that you need to refer to. So referencing for all 4 tasks, you should use and cite a range of case law, academic and reliable sources. A comprehensive Harvard referencing style system may be included at the end of the work, must be included at the end of the work. End of the assignment, make sure you do a conclusion. Make sure you have a reference list and a bibliography, because it identifies that you are doing extra, you've what sources you've used. It may be internet sources, it may be sources that are journal articles that you need to reference, and make sure you're using like online sites if you struggle to reference to help you with Harvard referencing. Assignment guidance and support. So summary, make sure you start with an introduction and conclusion towards the end. So this is, I reiterate this again, make sure you are using Harvard system for referencing. Again, this is really important. You can refer to online sites, and I've mentioned one on there. There's one called Cite Me, and there's one called Neil's Toolbox that I know that students and learners use to help them if they struggle with the dots and the commas in the right place. This would help support them. So make sure you are using them if you need support and help for your referencing, and make sure you are referencing properly using the Harvard system of referencing. If you are using diagrams, please make sure you reference them accordingly, and make sure you have a bibliography reference list, and it is in alphabetical order. What I've realized is when I've been marking assessments, learners have done a reference list or a bibliography, but have not put them in alphabetical order. You need to put them in alphabetical order, be it, any articles you've used, any case law you've used, any sort of books you've used, resources. It needs to be in alphabetical order. Try to use more examples when explaining certain concepts. For example, when looking at theories, case law, examples, try to use more examples, because it will build up your ideology that you know what you're talking about as well. Make sure you are using the assessment criteria, AC, as a heading for each part task. For example, if you're looking at task 1, AC 1.1, each task would be done with a heading. So, as I've shown you above that, if you are looking at things like, part 1 of the report, task 1, part 1, make sure it's a heading and you write under the heading the answer, okay? You need to be referring to the indicative content all the time and checking your word count, which for this assignment is 4,000 words. So 1,000 words each for each task. Useful tips: read the task carefully. Focus on what the tasks are asking you rather than moving away from what you think you should be answering. So answer the questions, make sure you're sticking to the word counts as well, and focus on the details. Command words use as guidance. I suggest that for action command words, you cover the task by writing them. So explain, define, describe, assess, examine, clarify, analyze, compare, contrast, evaluate. So make sure you are looking at leaving the command words. Do not change the command words. Again, we go back to Harvard referencing, reiterating the importance of Harvard referencing. Referencing needs to be Harvard, i.e. author, date, style. For example, Slack, Johnston, Brandon Jones, 2011, in the text, in the main text, the assignment itself. Avoid using bullet points. It's not an academic piece of work. You are level 7 students. In the reference towards the end, it will come as shown. So word limits, again, make sure you adhere to the word limits. Give proper headings and subheadings. Make the document look academically presentable and professional, okay? Word limit 4,000, 10% leeway. And plagiarism and tolerance, again, importance. Do not plagiarise, do not collude, do not copy and paste. Similarity must be below 20%, okay? When it starts going above 20%, there will be, you've signed the declaration, but there'll also be elements that you've breached the policy. You need to make sure you are not copying and pasting work, as it is plagiarism and would lead to academic misconduct. Make sure you reference all your sources, and make sure you check your grammar and spelling, which a lot of learners use American style grammar. So things like organization, make sure you are using the S instead of the Z, and checking your language and your grammar and your English spelling. Refer to ebooks and journals on Moodle for this unit. Any queries or questions, kindly email learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk, and submission of the assignment to be done on learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk. And its assignment submission is after 2 weeks of completion of the units and its delivery. So now you've completed the unit on law and financial crimes. You've done learning outcome 1, 2, 3 and 4, and they're all recorded on Moodle. And also this session on the assignment discussion will be completed soon, and this will also be available for you on Moodle as well. Okay, so I'm just gonna, the slides have now finished, but I'm just going to refer you to the assignment brief so that you've got a little bit of an understanding of how it looks, and you can find it on Moodle. So just let's share this. So the assignment brief is on Moodle, and it's available for you from the start. So it's got the unit title on there, it's got the unit reference number, it's got the credits, it's got all sorts of information in regards to your guided learning hours, pass or refer, what you could get. And then it's got the assessment criteria there, learning and assessment criteria. So learning outcome 1, what is expected of you? Learning outcome 2, what is expected? Learning outcome 3, what is expected? Learning outcome 4, and what is expected. And then it goes into your tasks. So it identifies what task you can do in regards to what learning outcome. So the first task, understand UK financial crime provision relating to insider dealing and market abuse, and what criteria needs to be covered. Now, a lot of this is on the discussion slides that I've done. Okay, all of it, all of it is on that. It's just, I wanted to just show you how the assignment brief looks, so you have an idea when you go onto Moodle. So it covers all the elements of task 1, task 2, task 3, and task 4. And it gives you guidance. It gives you assignment guidance. It gives you delivery and submission and referencing guidance as well. You need to be reading this properly. So if it's asking you to evaluate the reporting requirements and the impact on the global market, you need to evaluate that. You don't need to define it. You need to make sure you are looking at what the command words are and referring to the command words to make sense of one of the tasks. So you have 4 tasks. It's 4,000 words. Each task is 1,000 words each. Okay. The assignment brief is available on Moodle for you again. We've finished the assignment discussion now. We've finished all the learning outcomes, and this is available on Moodle, and the assignment discussion all is recorded, and all the learning outcomes are available on Moodle for you. Thank you. We've finished now. Thank you for attending the session, and good luck with completing your assignment. Thank you.